welcome your hosts, Maggie and Helen.
Hello, and welcome back to the Maggie and Helen Talk Show. My name is Helen Sneezer.
And I'm Maggie Longbottom. Today we have two very special guests with us here today.
One of Henry Ford's assistants, and Babe Ruth.
We also will be discussing our special segment of Table Talk with
Mildred Elliott and Mary Johnson.
To start today's show, we have one of Henry Ford's assistants here with us today, in place of Henry Ford himself since he is a very busy man.
Let's welcome Doris Furbottom to the stage. Welcome, Doris, to the Maggie and Helen Talk Show.
It's good to be here, Maggie and Helen.
So, Doris, how's it to work with Mr. Ford?
Good. Mr. Ford would not allow his workers to unionize, and the boring, repetitive nature of the assembly line work generation a high turnover rate.
I see. What are your thoughts on Mr. Ford's Model T Ford that became a significant innovation?
Well, the Model T Ford supported industrial growth, and the innovation of his cars became a symbol of freedom to many people.
Well, finally, how did assembly line help reduce labor costs?
The assembly line helped Ford reduce labor costs within the production process by moving the product from one team of the workers to the next. Ford's reliance on the assembly line placed emphasis on the efficiency over craftsmanship. Ford's focus on the cheap mass production brought both benefits and disadvantage to his workers.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Now we'll be moving on to our table talk.
This is your special segment on Table Talk.
Hello, welcome to your special segment of Table Talk. Today we will be joined by
Marie Johnson and Mildred Elliott.
Hello. Today, let's start it off with Mildred Elliott.
Now, there's been a new amendment proposed by Congress. It establishes the prohibition of intoxicating liquors in the U.S. Now, this is all in motivation of the temperance movement and declares production, transport, and sale of intoxication of liquor illegally, but doesn't allow the consumption of alcohol. Now, the disillusionment of alcohol led Congress to establish the 21st Amendment. It repealed the 18th Amendment and mandated nationwide prohibition on alcohol. This is quite unique, being that it is the only amendment that repeals a prior amendment and is ratified by the state ratifying conventions.
Wow.
Very illegal alcohol now.
So
A huge
sad.
problem.
That's
Bad
very-
substances.
What have we come to?
Now on to Helen.
Thank you. Today, the Scopes trial is also known as Scopes Monkey Trial, was the prosecution of the teacher John Scopes. The argument being made was whether teachers should be teaching evolution in schools or not. The trial being held had two of the best orators of the time, William Jennings Bryan and Clarence Darrow. They were opposing attorneys. People viewed the trial as an opportunity to challenge the constitutionality of the bills. Interesting.
Very.
Would you guys allow it to be taught in school?
Oh, I think
Wow.
yes.
Different opinions in the world
Yeah.
These days.
I guess so. But I think it's evolution. Children should be able to know.
Mhm.
You know? Okay. Now moving on to Maggie on the topic of Sacco and Vanzetti.
Thank you, Helen. That was very informative about the Scopes trial. Well, in my topics, Sacco and Vanzetti were both Italian-born American anarchists who were controversially convicted of murdering a guard and a paymaster during the April 15, 1920 armed robbery of the Slater & Morrill Shoe Company in Braintree, Massachusetts. These men were died from the electric chair at Charlestown State Prison because they were both adherents to the anarchist movement. In short, these men, Sacco was a shoemaker and a night watchman who migrated to the U.S. at the age of 17, while Vanzetti was a fishmonger who arrived in the U.S. at the age of 20. These men left Italy for the U.S. in 1908, although they did not meet until a 1917 strike.
Wow.
How do you guys feel about these men dying from being electrocuted?
I think
Electrical chair.
The punishment these days, I just think like it's so crucial. Does the punishment these days like match what they're getting as?
I
you
mean,
know?
yes, because they murdered a guard.
I'm just saying. It's like murdering someone you just murdered with, the person.
Yeah, well, we all have different opinions on the topic. But anyways, Mary Johnson, let's go to your topic on prohibition.
Thank you, Maggie. Prohibition in the U.S. was a nationwide constitutional ban on the production, importation, and transportation on sale and alcohol beverages.
Wow.
Wow.
This was to protect those who felt alcohol contributed to crime, domestic violence, and growth of saloon culture. But this backfired with enormous public demands for illegal alcohol. Gang members such as Al Capone and Bugs Moran battled for control of the Chicago illegal drinking dens known as speakeasies.
Wow. I think having a speakeasy would be pretty fun, though.
But illegal alcohol.
Yeah, that's not
Not
That's
allowed.
very true.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll be back after this break. Oh no.
Alcohol is prohibited. Rethink before you drink.
Hello, welcome back to Table Talk. I hope you liked that commercial break right there. Alright, now we're going to be talking about Langston Hughes. He was one of the most important writers and thinkers of the Harlem Renaissance, which you will hear more about in our Hot Topics. His creative genius was influenced by his life in New York City's Harlem. His literary works helped shape American literature and politics. He and many others that were a part of the Harlem Renaissance had a big racial pride. He promoted equality and condemned racism and injustice, as well as African American culture, humor, and spirituality in his poetry, novels, plays, essays, and children's books. He seemed like a very cool man.
Yeah, he did.
He wrote many books and plays that were very interesting about the African American culture.
Yeah.
I think he portrayed it very well and promoted equality within all.
Yes.
Right. Now let's move back to Maggie to talk about Marcus Garvey.
Well, it was very interesting learning about the Harlem Renaissance, Lauren,
Thank you.
and Lincoln Hughes. But another important person was Marcus Garvey, who was a Jamaican-born political activist, publisher, journalist, entrepreneur, and orator. Yes, this man was a lot of things. Garvey was the founder and first president of the of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Garvey is a controversial figure due to his pretentious character and were highly critical of his collaboration with white supremacists and his prejudice towards mixed-race people. Nevertheless, Garvey was received praise for encouraging a sense of pride and self-worth among Africans and the African diaspora amid widespread poverty, discrimination, and colonialism.
Wow.
Very
These men were very for equality.
Yes.
I like that. I think nowadays we need equality in the world.
Yeah.
We do.
Yes, race very needs of equality. Now we're going to move on to our hot topics. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome, and this is your Hot Topics. To start off, we will be talking about fashion with women and men. Let's first start off with women. Women were obviously showing more skin, even though their dresses were below the knee, loose, and had a more straight fit. They also had beaded evening dresses that often flappers would wear, which we'll learn more about when we talk about jazz music. They also had Mary Jane or T-strap heels, casual sport golf knickers, argyle socks, blouse, and ties. They would have cocoon fur coats and fringe wraps, cloche hats, and short bobbed hairstyles. Then, they had well-tailored pinstriped suits, tuxedos, silk shirts, and handkerchiefs inside the pockets. They had fedora hats and suspenders with bow ties. They also had black patterns and leather shoes. Now we'll talk about jazz. This was also known as the Jazz Age, which were the 20s. They had many dances such as swing and Charleston. Those were more common in the younger generations, which the older generations would frown upon. Many musicians that would play jazz were Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Red Hot Poppers, and King Oliver. There were many more, but we don't have time to finish all of those. Here's some music from that time. Besides music, here's another industry that was also up and coming.
So, the popularity of the movie industry is rising, and movie pictures are growing more and more. American teenagers would escape from their problems and lose themselves in another era or world. For example, Charlie Chaplin has been very popular lately with his silent movies. Aside from the movie industry, moreover, aside from movies, are the publishing of The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby brought out flappers, and not flappers, but flappers complete with their bobbed hair, shorter skirts, and cigarettes.
Very true, because as well as in the movie industry, flappers made an appearance within jazz and their dance.
Yes.
They'd often be the women that would go out and dance in the middle of the night at the street parties. Now, let's move on to our segment of an interview with Babe Ruth.
Hello, and welcome back to the Helen and Maggie Show. Let's go catch up with Helen at the baseball field. Hello.
Oh, rolling? Okay, welcome back. Let's go catch up with baseball player Babe Ruth at this Yankees Stadium. Babe Ruth, can I ask a couple questions?
Of course.
All right, so how did you get your start in baseball?
Well, I started playing at a school for boys, St. Mary's Industrial, and that's where they taught me. I played for the minor league, and now I play for the major league. I'm an outfielder.
Nice, very interesting.
Yeah.
What else have you contributed to society other than playing baseball?
Well, I've just visited some orphanages and some hospitals, visiting the sick kids, donating back to my community.
I got it.
Very interesting. Thank you. I'll let you head back to your practice.
All right, you have a good
day.
day, Ruth. Back to the studio with Helen and Maggie on Hot Topics.
And we're back. So before we start our final two hot topics, how was your interview with Babe Ruth at the Yankee Stadium?
Honestly, it was really nice. A little chilly outside,
Uh-huh.
pretty sunny, you know. But he was doing good. I didn't want to interrupt him too long because he was
Yeah.
out practicing with his other teammate. You'll see some of the practice going on in the background. Pretty good baseball playing, if you say.
Well, that's great. Let's start off with our last two topics.
Of course.
So, the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was an explosion of intellectual, social, and artistic people in New York. This was a movement called the New Negro Movement, including Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and etc., and more people that contributed that were African American.
Very interesting. Another part of the Harlem was Cotton Club, which opened in 1923 in Harlem, New York. The owner was Oni Madden, who used it as an outlet so he could sell his #1 beer to Prohibition crowd. As we talked about in our table talk, the Prohibition was becoming a very big problem because of how much illegal alcohol was being sold. This was also a contribution also as speakeasies.
Yes, it is.
All right, now for a commercial.
Life moves so fast.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a break. Thank you for watching this episode of the Helen and Maggie Talk Show.
And thank you to our special guests, Doris Furbottom and Babe Ruth.
And also Marie Johnson and Mildred Elliott. Till next time, thank you for joining in on their 20th decade throwback.
This is your segment of Table Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the Helen
Wait,
and Becky
it
Show.
didn't. It won't work if I. It's fine. We'll talk. Today we'll be joined by.
Oh, I forgot their names.
Let's start it off. We are going to start with.
I forgot your name. With a Mildred Elliott. Lauren.
It's right there.
Moving on to Maggie on the topic of Sacco and Vanzetti.
Thank you, Lauren. That was very informative about the Scopes trial. Well, Sacco and Vanzetti
you
were
said
both.
Lauren.
I did.
Yes.
Oh. We didn't have to say it. No. Okay.
Moving on, let's talk about fashion. This is not my page of fashion.
That's what's right here.
Flington, Ellington, and fuck. I said Flington and it's Ellington. Thank you for watching the Helen and Maggie TV talk show.
Life moves so fast.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a break.
Oh no.